Alright, what's up y'all, it's Lake 2 here. As you about to tell today's video, we're here to ask how practical is skill swap on Mega Gengar in Pokemon Champions. So, in case you're not familiar with what this move does, the user and the target swap their abilities. So, if Gengar uses this into an opponent or a teammate, he's going to pass off the Shadow Tag ability to them, as well as receive their ability at the same time. Now, this ability can be really good also on supporting mons next to Gengar. Problem is, it can't be used while protecting Gengar. So, you have to only do it on turns where Gengar would be exposed to the opponent anyway. So it's a little bit concerning in that regard. But for things like Bronzong, for instance, it's actually kind of useful. You can pass off your Levitate ability over to Gengar and then take the Shadow Tag and use it for yourself. We're here to talk about how we can maybe apply that to Gengar using it, and using himself as a little bit of a sacrificial lamb, if you will, and allowing the opponent to pretty much just take the KO on Gengar. And this is a little bit better of a use case for like later in the parish count, if you get what I'm saying. You don't want to use that super early where it's going to be obvious that then the opponent needs to target down the other slot. But Gengar is going to be, enemy number one when it comes to trying to take out in order to free themselves from the parish trap. So in order to kind of I would say redirect your opponent's attention or trick them in a sense as well, skill swap can pass off that Shadow Tag to your ally and make it so they still can't switch out even if they do take the KO on Gengar. And then obviously if they were focusing Gengar down really hard in the parish count like turns and they were getting them down to about 30%, 20% HP anyway, you might even have considered just sacrifice Gengar regardless. So in order to be able to get off the guaranteed parish trap, skill swapping can be useful. This will be useful in a lot of different use cases as well that we'll talk about in today's vid, like for instance with weather teams, being able to reactivate the weather, like for instance how Rain is a little bit incompetent when it comes to the opposing weather wars because Sun has Charizard to activate it through the Mega, Tyranitar has it to activate through non-Mega and Mega again. Frostlass can activate it on Mega activation as well. There is no Mega activation for Rain. However, if you were to, let's say, skill swap with Politoed or skill swap with Pelipper, Drizzle Pokemon in general, you're going to be able to reactivate the weather on the turn of them using their Mega activation. So Charizard would go first with the Mega activation, Drought gets summoned, and then boom, your skill swap is one of the first things to happen for the turn because of Gengar's speed, and then you're able to get the Rain set up, and then Politoed is going to be able to use his, water type Weather Ball in the Rain into a Charizard, for instance, that they would have never predicted, like a completely unexpected play. So let's talk about a lot of this stuff. I have a whole list that I'm going to show you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, feel free to drop a like, sub, if you need to turn on noties, all that good stuff. And like always, try this 100 to 200 likes. Alright, so first off, I want to start you guys off with the little example we have with Incineroar that I have, where we were able to actually enter a 100-player tournament with Parish Trap on the pre-Champions Pokemon Showdown server. So basically, this was just the mons that they thought were like confirmed to be in the game. Turns out mons like Grimmsnarl and Scrafty right here, as you can see, were on my team, ended up not making it in. I would have loved to have used both of these mons, but regardless, I want to show you an instance that we actually had with Incineroar that this worked out really good. So we were pretty deep into the tournament right here. You can see I have the captions for the games. We ended up going all the way to like the final four or something like that in this. But anyway, as you can see, we do have indeed the skill swap on Gengar. So we set up the Parish the turn before while faking out the Charizard, and I'm guessing that was like an Earth Power that we got hit into from Venusaur, and that's why we're on 30% with Gengar, So basically now, I'm kind of behind the 8 ball, if you get what I'm saying. Like, we're kind of cooked here, realistically. So, Incineroar walling both of these mons kind of leads me to believe that we could skill swap over our Shadow Tag to Incin and then just kind of stay in here. So we ended up firing off a Throat Chop with Incineroar. We could have potentially done like, a different supporting move, but a lot of Incineroar's bag is to be able to like switch out and stuff like that. So you can't protect on the turn of, like I told you guys. So if you skill swap, can't really do that. And then basically the only other options we would have had would have been Parting Shot, but we don't want to leave the field is the thing. So with Gengar obviously being ready to go down right here, Charizard is just going to have us cooked. This is the play that we made instead. And as you can see, it actually worked out really good because if I would have done my other tech, which is like a slow Parting Shot with Incineroar, where we would get the Parting Shot off and we can manually switch Gengar out and switch something else in like Primarina or something like that to take the Heat Wave, right, from Charizard. Basically, the idea behind that then would be switch Prim in, then later in the turn get the Parting Shot off with Incineroar and do it into one of these two slots so that we can get Gengar back in after we take damage from either the two slots. However, with the Venusaur Sleep Powder threatening us, instead what we did, as you can see, was go with the skill swap from Gengar into Incin. Now Shadow Tag is on Incineroar instead, and they take the KO into Gengar, and now our Asleep Incineroar is able to still keep them trapped on the field while they have their counter going down to 1 on the next turn. So basically, as you can see, we can bring something else in. We could even, let's say, fake out with Scrafty or something like that. And then we were getting glazed by our opponent right here. Shout out Pokemon Master 2009. This dude, I gotta show him love for that. He said that's just genius. I like it. And you know, I never ended up using the skill swap a whole lot, to be real with you. And I think what it was kind of useful for was the fact that we had 2 Intimidate mons on the team. So we had Scrafty and we had Incineroar. Now, as you can see, what we're planning to do right here is send Altaria in and just protect, and now we can do the switch out on the Incineroar because now that it's the final turn of their Perish count. So a sleeping Incineroar is still kind of useful. Obviously, we have, you know, the Perish Song Altaria, and whatever ends up in the back for them, we're going to be able to Perish Song the back too, and the more Intimidate fake outers that you have just in general, the better. So we actually go for the Protect with Incin instead, but long story short, you get the idea and you get the concept. It's kind of what I wanted to show you of just some gameplay of us using it. All right, so through all the time that I've spent kind of theory crafting this ability but not actually getting gameplay with it, and I might even consider doing that for the next couple of days just for the sake of like something new on the channel, to just try a little bit. I've been running a lot of Disable Gengar, which has been very valuable. We were running Substitute at the very beginning as well. We've even messed around with Reflect type as our, you know, 4th move slot that's just kind of kept on alternating with a lot of different tech that Gengar has to be able to utilize him. So basically, yeah, with Skill Swap, it was the very first one I ever did because like I was showing you in that tournament right there, it's what we actually kind of intended to do from the start. But if you were to build a team around Gengar where Skill Swap is useful, I have a lot of different ideas, simply put. So basically, for really useful abilities, my thoughts are things like Sheer Force. If like interesting mons for this ever get added to the game, currently there really aren't a whole lot, but if you were to add Sheer Force to Gengar, it makes it so Shadow Ball or Sludge Bomb do extremely, like, well, you know, it adds more damage essentially to the moves but removes their secondary effects. So Shadow Ball doesn't get the special defense drops, and then Sludge Bomb doesn't get the chance of poison. Basically, it removes the secondary effects being able to even have a chance at happening, however adds a 30% damage value to your moves. So it's like holding a life orb on Mega Gengar essentially is pretty powerful, but I don't think that's something useful enough to where like we can spend a turn doing that, if you get what I'm saying. So that's where the theory crafting stuff is going to be a little bit more hypothetical here, but we do have a lot of other really useful abilities. So for instance, with these bulky mons like Slowbro and Slowking, Toxapex, stuff like that, giving them Shadow Tag, these super bulk monsters, right, that are really hard to take off the field, and then to also get Regenerator for Gengar. So if he does survive the turn, when he does his switch out after maybe let's say a double protect on the next part of the turn, his Regenerator is going to boost his HP by 33% off, like, you know, exiting the field. So he's going to be able to utilize that Regenerator ability while also benefiting our team by passing off Shadow Tag to someone so bulky that can kind of sustain a whole lot easier into a lot more general Pokemon that could possibly be in the face of like a 2v1 threatening into them instead. So Regenerator is an idea that I kind of had. Let's say Amoonguss ends up in the game at some point, that'd be a really cool addition that we could end up kind of considering, because I'm not gonna lie, Shadow Tag Amoonguss while a Perish counter is dropping down and we can just hit Spore into people could be kind of fire, I can't lie. Taking Regenerator off Amoonguss is a little bit tough, obviously, but again, that versatility could be really fun to play with. Sturdy, really interesting ability to pair with Gengar once again, because a lot of these mons are extremely bulky, right? Like extreme defense investments with things like Aggron, Skarmory, Steelix, Bastiodon, stuff like that. And if they were to, instead of having Sturdy, end up having Shadow Tag, that's already really good synergy, as you'll kind of see me talk about toward the bottom right here with considering mons that are useful for Shadow Tag, rather than the ability Gengar receives. Parasong users, elite defensive stalwarts capable of sustaining for the team. I don't know why I accidentally misspelled that, but anyway, long story short, passing Sturdy off, however, to Gengar could be useful too, because if he only gets targeted by one slot, then that's going to be able to really, like, you know, reap the benefits right there, especially with how frail he is in general too. So I think this is a little bit more niche because it's also still possible Gengar gets double focused on the turn, to be fair. And also there's not many mons with Sturdy that create openings for Gengar to use Perish Song, to be fair as well. So the other tech that I want to kind of put you guys onto is that you could use this on switch in as well. So like, say I have something like Primarina in the slot with Gengar, and we used Protect plus Perish Song from Prim. So like Protect Gengar, Perish Song, Prim. Well, we can still switch in somebody in Prim's slot and use the skill swap for Gengar. So the idea I have for that, for instance, is something like Dragonite multiscale. At any moment, you could just switch in Dragonite, and if Gengar is clearly being focused and needs to be able to take a really big hit, like for instance something like Psychic from Gardevoir, or Psychic from Delphox, or let's say even a Basculegion. No, I'm not going to use Basculegion as a last respects example, just because he might end up outspeeding us, to be fair. But anybody that Gengar is faster than, that he's clearly going to be taking a lot of damage from, switching in Dragonite with multiscale and getting that skill swap into the former Primarina slot or whatever your teammate was before, but directing the skill swap into your teammate slot, and then stealing your Dragonite's multiscale while also then passing off the Shadow Tag to something really bulky like Dragonite for that matter too. So that's an idea that we have. Not to mention, we already told you guys about the weather control. So for instance, we have like Politoed Drizzle. Remind you, with Politoed being a Parasong user, I feel like being able to reactivate the weather for Politoed is really helpful to be able to make sure that if you run Weather Ball, it's going to be a move that can actually do big damage consistently, rather than having to play these weather wars of like, when can I switch Politoed in, can I even lead him, stuff like that. Again, the skill swap is a go button that we can really take advantage of in that regard. You have to be a little bit mindful of things like Chlorophyll Venusaur being kind of threatening though, to be fair, because then it can go faster and then like threaten Politoed with big damage. And remind you, we have to use skill swap into a non-protecting teammate, so it can be a little bit harder than I'm leading it on to be, but the use cases for it can be really interesting, I must say. So again, Politoed with Drizzle, it gives you weather control, really good. Ninetales Alolan with the snow warning, really good capability of that. Not to mention, when Ninetales gets something like an Aurora Veil off to boost up the defense and the special defense of your teammates for 5 turns when in the snow. And then not to mention, when Ninetales is already an ice type and then it's in the snow, it's going to be getting a defense boost of making the physical defense or physical attack moves do half the amount of damage going into a Ninetales. So that's a really cool use case I have as well. We'll come back to Ditto in a sec. It's a little bit harder to explain. Tyranitar, once again, for Sandstream activation, as well as just, you know, in general, the same thing applies to him. In the sand, rock types are going to be receiving a pretty much 1.5x special defense boost. So if Tyranitar can hold even more value of something like being able to make sure the sand is online while not even using him as a mega, it's kind of the same thing as his, you know, mega activation, essentially. And then also, you know, with Titar being such a bulky monster that he is, while also having something like Shadow Tag active could be kind of fire, you know? I'm just saying, let's just adding some theory crafting here. And then we have things like Levitate on Rotom, or again, we talked about Bronzong. Stuff like that can be pretty useful to make it so Gengar can sustain, you know, incoming ground type moves. The only problem is typically when you steal Levitate from an ally, it's typically going to leave them vulnerable to the ground type moves. So for instance, Rotom, like if it's Rotom Wash or Rotom Heat especially, is going to be 4x super affected by ground if you remove his Levitate ability, or likewise with Bronzong becoming super affected by ground if that was the case. So you have to be a little bit mindful of stuff like that. Ditto is interesting. So I have an idea, right? And it's something that takes a lot of theory crafting, but this is what we're here for with the videos. If you guys enjoy something like this too, feel free to let me know. I really do like taking the ideas and giving them to you guys, rather than, I find a lot of people are really intrigued by the team building concepts rather than actually seeing gameplay so much. And I come from the 2K community where that is such a common thing as well, as seeing build videos rather than like just the gameplay itself. And people are cool with just seeing the builds. So I think this is a type of video format that I'd like to continue to do in the future, of the theory crafting, even if I don't have a ton of gameplay to support the concept at hand. But anyway, let's say it was Ditto, right? In Shadow Tag, with Gengar being able to trap the opponents, they can't reposition or anything like that. So basically, you can know exactly who you're copying if you have a Ditto on your team with Gengar. And then I want to even still kind of theory craft even more with you. So let's say, like for instance, they have let's go look at the megas real quick. I want to give a good example, and I haven't really looked at this one too much. So let's just look at these base stats and look at some crazy megas. So for instance, if you already see a Dragonite out there with multi-scale, boom, you could send your Ditto in, copy their Dragonite, take their multi-scale, but then pass your, in that same exact turn of you doing the switch in and knowing that Ditto is going to copy the opposing Dragonite, you could skill swap into your own teammate slot and take that multi-scale for Gengar, while also then giving your new Mega Dragonite next to your Mega Gengar, for that matter, by the way, remind you, give him the Shadow Tag. So we have cool stuff like that. Mega Floette, you know, copy their Floette with your Ditto and then give it Shadow Tag. And then also, because Fairy Aura is still on the field, because obviously they have a Floette anyway, and Fairy Aura is going to be on the field because they're out there. But your Gengar also would then have Fairy Aura. I don't know if this is stackable. I don't think so. Let me know how Mirror Match Floette matches go. I don't think it's stackable though by any means. But anyway, you can't use it into specific mons. So things like Palafin, if they have a signature ability, it typically sometimes can make it where you aren't able to take this off. I don't know if Palafin applies exactly. I do know, however, that you can't skill swap with Aegislash with the Dance Change ability. So that's where it can be a little bit of a problem. But again, like, once again, we're just talking about using this with Ditto, for instance. Boom, here you go, right? Maybe you copy Mega Delphox and then you skill swap into your new Mega Delphox that you have because, again, Ditto has a little bit of untouched tech right now. I'm not gonna lie, it hasn't really been explored a whole lot, and in the Paris Trap team format, I think it could actually be used pretty good. It's hard to play around because it's inconsistent, you know what I mean? But yeah, not to mention you get to carry your own item on Ditto that you want as well. But yeah, we don't have a lot of great ideas off the top of the head. However, you can see where the creativity could kind of come to play a little bit more for him. But anyway, back into these abilities though, we didn't talk about Intimidate much yet. However, I did already show you the instance of using it with Incineroar. So other ideas for stuff like that would be, for instance, Gyarados, Arcanine, Tauros, stuff like that. If we come over here to Showdown and we can simply just do this, and this is how you guys could actually kind of look into interesting abilities for the skill swap. As you can see, we're in the Reg MA format, and I actually don't think there's a way that you can see that right now, but these are only mons that are allowed in the Reg A that we're currently playing in. And then you can even just sort by base stats, see who has, you know, Intimidate that are the best non-megas, and as you can see, it's things like Arcanine, Gyarados, Incin. Weirdeer, not super valuable, but even Crocodile could be okay. Tauros, once again, both forms. And then we'll end up getting a lot more mons as well. As you can see, like, there are a lot of powerhouses that we still have yet to see that have Intimidate, like, for instance, Salamence and Scrafty, and then Landorus, as we also saw right there as well. The list is going to go on and on for sure, with a lot of these extra mons being added to the game. So things like Intimidate could end up being really valuable. And then, as we mentioned, you can consider a lot of the other like bulk ideas of just giving someone Shadow Tag rather than what Gengar receives in return. As far as other ideas that I had that were currently already on my team in the moment, we have things like Kamo-O, who, like, if you use Paris Song, his counter isn't going down, and then you could pass off the Shadow Tag ability to Kamo-O so that he can maybe even be setting up in turns where, like, the count's going down for the opponent, stuff like that, or even get, like, Rest plus Lumberry value with getting his HP healing and stuff like that as well. A lot of the main components that I was talking about though would be Incin, or Sinistcha is an interesting idea as well. So Sinistcha has pretty decent bulk. Let's come over to Showdown and I'll show you Sinistcha real quick. So if we pull up Sinistcha, as you can see, it's gonna have a nice 106 base defense while also still having decent special defense, and then also a good ability to keep itself alive with something like Matcha Gacha, where basically, as you can see, recovers 50% of the damage dealt and is a spread move that hits into both opponents. So basically, the idea of passing off Shadow Tag to Sinistcha would then be, with your Hospitality, you're actually going to gain Hospitality on Gengar and make it so Sinistcha gets healed 25% of its HP, and then also is going to be passing off the Shadow Tag over to Sinistcha, who, for that matter, you know, if you run things like Protect, we obviously have Strength Sap as well, where this has an amazing ability to be a sustained Pokemon. So basically, Sinistcha doing stuff like this isn't as useful because, you know, how do I put this? It's not as important that Sinistcha stays alive typically, but when you then pass off the Shadow Tag ability to Sinistcha, and you could do something like, for instance, have Strength Sap, or let me even cook up with you guys real quick, even harder. Choice Scarf Sinistcha. It's going to have, with a base almost 80 speed, it's going to be 70, but if you were to crank this up all the way and even run it like plus speed nature or something like that, boom, you're at 134. If we come over to the calc, actually, I'll just do this as a better way to go about this. Basically, this was the concept I wanted to get at. So here, we kind of expedited the process here. Now, remind you, I have a different Garchomp scaled right here where I just want to be able to see max speed Garchomp while also seeing somewhat invested bulk Garchomp, while also seeing max damage Garchomp. So basically, you can't actually have all these numbers together, but this is just what I have for our current, like, you know, setup, just so I can see all that at once whenever I search this up. But basically, as you can see, something like a Garchomp that we can't really dish out a ton of damage to. However, if you were to hit it with Matcha Gacha, boom, that's going to be healing you about like 13% HP, and then whatever's in the other slot, you're also going to be healing off it as well. But Choice Scarf Sinistcha outspeeds and can hit Strength Sap, and that takes your opponent's attack stat and heals you for that much. As you can see, 182, for that much HP. So if Sinistcha was extremely low on HP, remind you, we're going to be dropping Garchomp's attack stat before it can even hit us. So then it's going to be nullifying the damage down to this, while also healing yourself for this amount of HP. And as you can see, that lines up very well with Sinistcha's HP like max typically, and against things like Incineroar, you wouldn't believe it how well a Sinistcha can stand in the face of an opposing Incineroar. And remind you, like, we're going to be hitting Strength Sap into that, dropping its attack stat by 1 while also stealing 135 HP and putting that into our own HP pool as well. And there could be even more attack invested in Incineroars, like for instance an Adamant one where it's going to be 148 instead, and then you're going to like not get enough damage dished back to you, and with a Shadow Tag Sinistcha to be able to just fire off Strength Sap over and over again. That's kind of the idea that I have, and once again paired with like Matcha, stuff like that, could be useful. I guess to fill out like a remaining Choice Scarf Sinistcha, it'd probably be stuff like this. Is probably the way you'd want to go about it, but you could even run non-Scarf Sinistcha if you'd like to as well. So that was a cool little idea that we had, where once again Gengar getting the Hospitality ability themselves would boom set you up like that. And then also you could pass this back and forth. You could literally just spam skill swap in your in-between turns that aren't you pressing protect on a Paris trap, like, you know, Shadow Tag situation, where basically if I were to, let's say, spam Life Dew with Sinistcha while also hitting the skill swap with Gengar every turn, Shadow Tag and Hospitality are going to alternate back and forth between each other, and as long as one isn't KO'd, basically you're going to heal 50% on one slot and 25% on the other, in combination of Hospitality plus Life Dew between the two of them, back to back to back turns. And then Sinistcha could even still run Rage Powder, stuff like that, to redirect the damage into them if it's a turn where you want to skill swap it back. This is basically like Toto from JJK, if y'all get what I'm saying, the little boogie woogie clap. So basically, yeah, we're redirecting where our enemy thinks that we have threat, but then no longer is it there anymore before their turn even ends up being able to be played out. So yeah, just a little bit of idea. And again, Weather Setters, really good use case where Gengar could make use of this as well. So anyway, that's all for the vid. I just wanted to theory craft with you guys a little bit, bring some ideas to your attention, and really, like, you know, just foster some ideas in the head. If you want to check this out yourself of mons that would work out really good with this, again, you could just literally go to the Champions decks. Let's go to this and show you guys how to do this from the start. So basically, you go to Format on Pokemon Showdown, go to Champions VGC Reg MA, and then you're just going to go down to a team builder once you're in this. And now it's going to only allow you to pick from mons that are legal in the current format. So you could sort by base stats, you could sort by like exactly who you want to pair it with. If you have an ability in mind, like for instance Regenerator, you can just filter it by only that. Now as you can see, we have things like Toxapex, Slowking, you know, both forms of Slowking and Slowbro. Ranculus, I don't know how you pronounce this. Hydrapple is also an interesting fit as well. Audino with Regenerator as well, with also having like Ally Switch and Life Dew themselves. And yeah, once we end up a little bit more mons in the game, something like Amoonguss, for instance, would be a really cool mon to use that with, or Eldegoss, stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, just wanted to put you guys on game a little bit and show you how you could potentially lab up stuff like this yourself as well. But yeah, that multi-scale Dragonite is, in my opinion, one of the coolest ideas in terms of preserving Gengar's life while also giving it off to a pretty bulky mon, all things considered as well. So anyway, just wanted to theorycraft. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to see more of these, let me know as well. I'd really like to continue doing videos like this, but I don't know if people want more confirmed gameplay with it. What I might do with these vids is give the ideas and then in a future video do the actual gameplay functions themselves and see how that performs. Or maybe I'll just start waiting to actually get more footage of an idea that we can actually like bring to you guys and have proof of the evidence of it working. But either way, let me know how you want to go about that. I'm down to be malleable in that sense and kind of conform to whatever you guys want to see. But anyway, that's all for the vid. If you did enjoy and you want to show your support that you made it all the way through, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on them noties, all that good stuff. And if you did want to show your support that you made all the way through, put swap, or you could put skill swap in the comments as well if you'd like to show your support that you made all the way through. But anyway, that's all. Appreciate you guys for watching. None of that, take it easy, man. Peace.